Hey guys, today let's make an under the sea sugar cookie set. I'm going to share with you all of my tips and tricks. First thing is I'm using pipeable and stiff consistency icing, and this is important because they both do different things. I'm starting by outlining the cookie and then flooding it in with the pipeable icing. Pipeable icing has a lot higher liquid ratio, which means it can cover the surface quicker and it's a lot gentler on your hands. Stiff consistency rural icing has more powdered sugar added to it so that it's thicker. That way it won't spread out when you go to pipe on your details and they'll look sharper and more precise. You may have saw me poking all those holes in the cookies and thought, what is she doing? But I'm not crazy. There is a theory behind this. So sometimes when your rural icing dries down, what happens is these dips or craters form and you'll see an uneven surface. So to avoid that, there's this idea that poking holes in the cookies helps to distribute that icing. Another way to avoid the craters is to make sure you're not skimping on the icing when you're piping your base layer. Let's go back on how to make pipeable and stiff consistency icing. I have a recipe on my website. It's my rural icing recipe. It's 2 ingredients. It's really easy. And what you're going to do is make the recipe and the ratios are going to make a pipeable consistency. Then you're going to divide it into 6 bowls. And that's because I'm using 6 colors for this cookie set, including white. If you don't want to use that many colors, you don't have to. Whatever's manageable for you. You're going to divide them into bowls and then dye them with the food gel dye. Now the white still add into a bowl even though we're not going to be dyeing it. After you've mixed all of the colors, you're going to take about 2/3 of the icing from each bowl and put it into a piping bag. And then you're going to add a couple of teaspoons of powdered sugar at a time until that rural icing isn't runny anymore. So you could put your spatula into the bowl and it's not going to run off the spatula. But you don't want to add too much powdered sugar that you wind up having a paste, because if you have a paste, you're not going to be able to pipe it. I have to be honest, I've been decorating sugar cookies for years, and mixing the colors and creating the consistencies is probably my least favorite thing. But once you've got that all ready to go, then all you have to do is worry about decorating. So it's just a matter of getting yourself set up so that decorating will be really easy. Now what I'm doing here is I'm doing the wet on wet technique, which basically means you want to pipe on those little white squiggles before the base layer dries, then use a scribe tool or a toothpick and gently pull down, cleaning the tip in between, and then it'll dry down into this cool pattern which looks really nice on these shells. Now let's move on to the starfish, and I'm going to outline this one in blue, but then I'm going to change up the colors and I'm going to do the orangey coral color and then a purple one. And I think it's fun to create different colored starfish. It just adds to the whimsy of the sugar cookie set. My next tip is all about efficiency, because piping on sugar cookies can be very time consuming and you don't want to really skip around, pipe a base layer on one, then add details on the other and just go back and forth. This will save you tons of time, so if there's any tip that you take away, let it be this one. You want to start by flooding all your cookies. So in the clip here, you see that all of my cookies have their base layer done. So by the time you're done with the last cookie, the very first cookie that you flooded will be dry enough where you can start piping on your details. This saves a ton of time. Now we're going to go in and start adding all the details using the stiff consistency icings. And I'm a really detail-oriented person, so this is my absolute favorite part of sugar cookie decorating. You can see what I did to the fish. I just added some really simple details, and then I'm adding these little dots as the suckers onto the octopus. And for this entire set, I'm going to show you how using dots really elevates your cookies. And if you're a beginner, using dots is really a simple task. You could see how I'm adding them onto the octopus's face. So we'll talk about that more in a bit. But now we're going to jump over to the jellyfish. We're going to use my tip about letting things dry in an order that will help you be more efficient. So because I know that I want to create multicolored tentacles for the jellyfish, I'm going to add the first layer of tentacles for each of my jellyfish cookies. Then I'll jump to do another design and then we'll come back. Stiff consistency royal icing is not as wet and runny as a pipeable icing, so it doesn't really need as much time to dry. However, it's just a habit of mine to give things a couple minutes in between when I'm going to pipe on different colors on top of each other, just to take extra precaution that things aren't going to run and spread into each other. My other tip is to cut the piping hole smaller than you think that you need, because it's easier to cut it larger, but you can't go back the other way. And I always just try to minimize how many piping bags that I use just to create less waste. We're going to move right along and we're going to let those tentacles dry down. And now we're going to create some fun dots for our starfish design. So what you want to do is create a big middle dot and then some medium ones on the starfish's arms. And this is a really fun way to add some texture and some cool kind of 3D effect almost. Now you're welcome to look at a reference picture if you want to look at what a starfish looks like, if you want it to be more precise. My kind of decorating style is to be more whimsical and rustic, just to kind of have like the vibe of the jellyfish or the starfish, if you know what I mean. I don't really like the hyper realism, and there are tons of other decorators out there, and every cookier has their own style, but this is mine, and I do think it's more forgiving if you're a beginner because it doesn't have to look so perfect. My next tip is to pay attention to the details, and for this set I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to elevate your designs only using dots. Piping on these dots serves a couple different purposes. They add texture to the cookies, and all the designs except for the seashells are going to have dots so that they'll have the same kind of theme. And also dots remind me of bubbles, and in the ocean there's bubbles, so it just kind of gives it that whimsical touch. Now we're going to move on to the seahorse, which I think is the most difficult design in this set, only because we're going to add the most detail onto this one, but it's really not that difficult. You use the white stiff consistency icing to fill in its little belly. And then I'm going to use the other colors to just kind of lightly outline and just enhance the seahorse features. And if your icing breaks like how mine did in this shot, just use your scribe tool or a toothpick to just kind of lightly go over it. When you serve these cookies to people who aren't cookie decorators, which is most people, they're not going to notice the mistakes that you and I would notice. So it's just something to keep in mind. You don't want to give yourself too hard of a time. This brings me to my next sugar cookie tip to make your cookie sets look cohesive and pretty and like everything flows very well together, is to use the same stiff consistency piping icing color that you used on the base layer. So for example, this purple seahorse that I just outlined, the base layer is purple and the main details that I outlined are also purple. Or the starfish that's blue, it has that blue base layer and then I piped on the blue details. So by keeping the colors the same and keeping it cohesive for the most part, it's going to make it look a lot less overwhelming and busy. I am adding white details onto the seahorse, so this isn't a hard and fast roll. It's just kind of like the main details of the cookie look really nice if they match the base layer. Finish up the detail on the seahorses. You want to outline their stomach using the stiff consistency icing color that matches the base layer color. Then I'm going to pipe some horizontal lines across the stomach just to give it some nice added texture. And then finally, we're going to add some more dots, and I'm just going to do this on the top and then on the bottom. To add on the little faces, I dipped a toothpick into some black food gel dye. You could definitely make some black royal icing, but it takes a lot of icing and time and we don't need that much, so I decided to go with the gel dye, and it's such a little amount it won't stain anyone's mouth. I told you guys earlier that one way to elevate your cookie set is to decorate with light colors or almost monochrome colors. And one way to break it up though, to make it a little more interesting visually, is to have one or two cookie shapes that do have multiple colors, like this jellyfish design. I'm going to add this little frilly thing here. I don't know what it's called. I'm totally doing this by memory. I have no reference pictures. And finally, I'm going to add some shimmer onto the other cookies. Now, you don't have to do this step at all, but when I think of the ocean, I think of the sparkling waters, and so that's why I love to add glitter. I just also love glitter in general, so I try to sneak it into a lot of my cookie sets. This is a mixture of edible luster dust and vodka, but you could also use vanilla extract. It's going to evaporate as it dries down, but you need a liquid to activate it to help it stick onto the cookie. I'm going to add the final layer of tentacles, and I'm using the white stiff consistency icing. And I love how these jellyfish turned out. They're so much fun, and I think designs like this are great for beginners because they're really forgiving. You don't have to be exact in what you're doing. I'm literally piping on squiggly lines. I saved this last part of the jellyfish design for the end because I knew that I was going to cut the tip of the piping bag and make a very large hole. That way we can pipe out a lot of stiff icing at the same time, and it creates a nice puffy effect. That way it looks like the head of the jellyfish is kind of in front, and then you have the tentacles layered behind, so it has a little more realistic effect. Of course, I'm going to add on some dots. I can't finish this design without a few dots, and because every other shape has some dots as the details, except for the shells, it all kind of just looks very cohesive. And all of these tips that you've learned in this video, you can use for any kind of designs. It doesn't just have to be this under the sea set. And here's some behind the scenes of me arranging the cookies so that I can shoot them for my blog. And I have all of my recipes on my website, so I'll put links below if you're interested. These are the best sugar cookies, if I do say so myself. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.